Veníamos al río. Y el río era un lugar de esparcimiento. Habían camarones, sacábamos camarones. Aquí nomás donde están. Camarones, pececitos, llevamos nuestra bolsa, nuestra botellita, y sacamos peces y camarones, ¿no? Eso uno tenía como...
Pan con camarón. Pan. Íbamos, pedimos pescaditos, qué rico pescado, camarones, qué rico, qué rico. Ya no volverán esos tiempos.
40 años.
Pero prácticamente esto ya no es un canal, es un botadero de basura. Claro. Y que no solamente contamina a los de acá, que les perjudica a todos.
De por sí, el río Chillón es un desagüe. Es un desagüe, sí, sí. O sea, tiene desagüe industrial y desagüe doméstico.
La basura, ¿no? Por parte de los malos vecinos, tenemos el arrojo también de los desmontes, ¿no? Que una u otra forma van contaminando pues todo este flujo hídrico.
As Master's students of Environment and Sustainable Development in University College London, we partook in 3 weeks fieldwork related to the research project Disrupting Urban Risk Traps in Lima, which explores the conditions that produce and reproduce urban risk traps, how and where they materialize, and with what consequences. The project examines how risk accumulation cycles can potentially be disrupted through abridged actions and investments. We focused on water-related everyday risks in the peri-urban area of Chuquitanta, located in the north of Lima. The first human settlements in Chuquitanta date from around 4000 BC. Many archaeological sites, such as the El Paraíso Pyramid and ancient irrigation channels, remain in the area. In 1701, the Hacienda of Chuquitanta was created, and many different crops were cultivated. Around 1945, the population of Lima began to expand to North Lima, and in 1950, the municipality of San Martín de Porres was created, and Chuquitanta was no longer part of the municipality of Caraballo. The agricultural reform that took place towards the end of the 1960s resulted in the Hacienda of Chuquitanta being divided and sold to some of the families working there. The population growth continued into the 1970s and 80s, with people moving to the capital in search of better opportunities. The 1980s in Peru is characterized by a worsening of social and economic conditions, driven by the failed policies of the radical left, along with structural reforms that changed the Peruvian economy. In the 1990s, Alberto Fujimori was elected as president, and Luis Castañeda became mayor of Lima. The heavy fighting between the army and the guerrilla group, Sendero Luminoso, in addition to a more neoliberal approach to the economy, reinforced the continued population growth in the north of Lima. Despite various initiatives to legalize and improve the conditions in informal settlements during the 90s, planning in San Martín de Porres and Chuquitanta was largely neglected. Ecosystem degradation and conflicts between farmers in the area and the inhabitants became a recurring problem. This was in part due to the area being seen as a dumping ground for the city. In the early 21st century, the unplanned urbanization and the pressures of economic development in the area continued. Recently, Luis Castañeda was re-elected as mayor of Lima, and a disconnection between policies of the previous administration and the new administration is likely to occur. Meanwhile, in Chuquitanta, there are still farmers who are dependent on the land for their livelihood. On the other hand, the rapid urbanization is taking different forms, partly informal, leading to unequal access to public services. Some groups in the area face high vulnerability by living close to the River Chillon, within risk areas and over archaeological sites. At the same time, there are different legal and illegal industries, such as paper production and pig farms, with major environmental impacts. At the same time, stronger debates on a world stage between economic forces and voices fighting for water as a human right begins to gain momentum.
Nos sentimos tan indefensos porque no tenemos quien nos defienda. Vivimos en un sitio, como dice, una tierra de nadie.
Ha sido considerado siempre el botadero más importante de basura.
Contaminar las aguas que están circulando hoy por todo el distrito y que finalmente es un círculo vicioso que contaminamos las aguas y las aguas contaminan nuevamente al vecino y es un círculo que se da y se repite y llega hasta niveles desastrosos que usted lo ha podido ver.
The conceptual framework for our study is the hydrosocial cycle. This represents and analyses the socio-ecological nature of water in recognition that water is shaped by human activities and institutions. By understanding the nature of water and its circulation, the hydrosocial cycle has the potential to reveal problems associated with everyday risk and therefore possibilities for progressive change. Everyday risk can be defined as the widespread risk associated with the exposure of populations to persistent hazard conditions, often of a highly localized nature, which can lead to cumulative undesirable manifestations. In the case of Chuquitanta, water-related issues are the most prevalent and extensive cause of everyday risks. We endeavoured to understand how different environmental and health risks are manifested, and the way in which stakeholders interact with this source, thus creating different perceptions related to water. Furthermore, we wanted to identify the coping mechanisms already in place, and the possibilities for scaling these up in order to enhance participation processes and long-term dialogue, while proposing initiatives to complement, consolidate, and scale up these key actions towards a complete hydrosocial cycle, thus challenging the current status quo in Chuquitanta. In order to do this, we worked in conjunction with the community and institutions to delve further into the risks, coping mechanisms, and future visions for the area through a series of interviews, transit walks, focus groups, surveys, and workshops. In the Chuquitanta of today, ecosystem degradation has occurred as a result of water pollution from upstream in the Chillon River, combined with localized waste contamination and over-extraction of groundwater. In addition, Chuquitanta is experiencing immense urban pressure from all sides, resulting in an encroachment onto and a loss of agricultural land and green space. On the one hand, there is pressure from the coast as the port of Callao and industries continue to grow. On the other, the city is expanding rapidly and land is at a premium. This land pressure has resulted in agricultural land being divided and sold, both legally and on the informal market. These structuring factors create problems such as inadequate waste management, intrusion on land and open spaces, pollution of both the river and irrigation channels through industry contamination from upstream, and waste contamination at a local level. For the residents, these issues manifest themselves in everyday risks. Let's take the issue of waste management in Chuquitanta first. There was a mismanagement of waste collection in the area due to a combination of population increase and sporadic waste collection from the municipality. This, combined with attitudes within the community, resulted in solid waste being dumped into the river, irrigation channels, and on the streets. Furthermore, waste collection services from other districts do not heed the current municipality's authority and come to Chuquitanta to dump their waste on the riverbanks. This leads to exposure to stagnant water, which is a source of diseases such as dengue. Also, by not having access to basic services, parts of the community have to depend on unreliable water trucks, which distribute low-quality, uncontrolled water that is being consumed by the population and results in intestinal health issues. This affects the perception the community have of the channels and of the river, which reinforces the negative behaviour of dumping waste. This also creates division within the community. For example, the housing associations want the channels shut because of health hazards associated with them. The local irrigation committee, on the other hand, blames the community for polluting the water. The negative perception of water reinforces the actions of industries upstream and contributes to a lack of enforcement and penalties when companies cause pollution at a regional and national level. The fact that the water is already polluted when it reaches Chuquitanta leads to acceptance and contributes to the lack of responsibility felt by stakeholders in the area towards its preservation and care. Secondly, the rapid urbanization of the area has meant areas that were previously reserved for agricultural or recreational use have been sold off in smaller plots through both the official real estate market and the informal one. This rapid population growth has meant that open spaces that were previously protected, such as the riverbanks, known as the Faja Marginal, El Paraíso, and ancient walls, are being encroached upon and destroyed. Moreover, open space is either being lost or not even being developed throughout the neighbourhoods, leading to desertification and large quantities of dust in the area. This has profound effects on the respiratory health and the quality of life in the community. From this analysis, we identified variables that can be addressed and acted upon by devising community-based strategies. These variables are the behaviours of people, education, and governance. In order to remedy this, while building upon initiatives that are currently in place within Chuquitanta, we have devised 3 strategies that could challenge the current status quo and recover a shared goal, which is based on the idea that water is not something disconnected from society, but is part of a system of interdependencies.